Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome to the discussion for Brass Birmingham. Again, the greatest game ever made.
Right. According to everyone.
Yeah, according to everyone. Not through any, not through its own merit, but through the cringiness and what's the word? Vindictive nature of this player base.
Right.
There is actually a Reddit page, because we obviously got to talk about it, where he pulled stats of like voters, like how many voters for Brass and Gloomhaven, and it was hundreds of players of the Brass community who voted ones on Gloomhaven, and the Gloomhaven players were significantly less of voting Brass. So it's clearly like this community who just for some reason hates Gloomhaven for zero reason, just going out and voting at ones that shut it down to number 3.
Right.
Interesting.
And so that was just an interesting piece of data that in and of itself means absolutely nothing except to people who need to go outside and touch grass.
It does though point out the inherent flaw in caring what other people think.
that and the inherent flaw of the BGG ranking system.
As a system.
That is just bad. But, because in my opinion, I think they should scrap that and do a once-a-year vote where everyone goes to Board Game Geek, vote one game, you get one vote for your favorite game, and that's what determines a separate link of, like, here's the BGG Top 100, because you wouldn't get duplicate games, and you wouldn't get bullshit like this, where...
if you're going for what number 1 is.
Exactly. Because, obviously, I don't care what is in the top 100, but some people who's new to the hobby might come in and be like, oh, well, I don't really know what games are good. I'll go to this trusted system. And they're going to see Brass, Pandemic Legacy, number 2 now, and Gloomhaven. And then you couldn't have more different games than those
a couple that, like, TI's number 5.
Yeah, Arc Nova's number 4.
Right.
Yeah, so just radically different games.
And they all suck. I'm sorry.
No.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
Oh, yeah. No, so I wanted to bring that up because I was thinking about doing a separate video talking about that, but then I realized I don't actually care to do a separate video, so I was like, well, we'll finally do this for
6 months it won't matter. It'll be over anyway, so nobody will care.
Right. So I was like, okay, perfect opportunity to play this game, put it on the channel, and then kind of talk about it there. Now, do I think Brass Birmingham is the best game of all time? Absolutely not. Do I think Gloomhaven is the best game of all time? Absolutely not.
Right.
Neither is there is no best game of all time because...
Time isn't out yet.
Right.
There's going to be more games next year.
That is true. And everyone is different. So it the comparison of those two games, you could not have the furthest ends of the spectrum between the two.
Right.
Now, with that being said, do I think Brass Birmingham is a good game? I do.
Yep.
I don't think this game is bad. Here's the weird thing. I don't particularly like it, though. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I think I've played this game multiple times now, and I'm kind of like, all right.
Right.
Yeah, that's the game. I have some kind of criticisms with it, but ultimately, I think it's a solid Euro, but I wouldn't willingly choose to play it over a lot of other Euros. This is in that niche. This kind of reminds me a little bit of like Concordia, where it's like, yeah this is solid. This is a solid game. All right.
Nothing to hate.
Yeah.
But nothing really stands out.
Yeah, nothing's like, whoa, and that's because everyone raves about this, and everyone raved about Concordia, and I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
And I think some of it is a straight up solid Euro game. I like this to a certain extent, kind of like Barrage. There's fun player interaction because you're taking other people's resources, but it benefit them. It benefits them. But then, like, I wanted some coal that I had out there, like I had planned, and I had just the right amount of money that I couldn't buy coal.
Yeah.
And someone took it. And it's like, okay, now I have to change my play. It didn't drastically change it, but we were close enough at the end that money started being less and less valuable.
Yeah.
Because pretty much I was doing every play where, like, I ended with $1. But then I got $20 anyway.
Right.
And that was just enough to do the next play in the next turn.
Yeah, you're kind of strapped for cash at the very beginning, and then by the middle of Era 2, your income level should be enough to be like, I don't need to take a loan. You could
Right.
take a loan if you really don't have another action and you just kind of want to set up for bigger moves.
Right.
But
That's it.
it does have a nice flow to it.
Yep.
I think like it naturally is like, okay, you're starting out in the Industrial Revolution. It's hard, and by the end of it, you're like, yeah, we got our business going. Boom. Now it's just kind of maximizing points. The end game every single time I've played this has always kind of been the same beats where it's just like drop your hand just to put rails down.
Right.
I really don't. That's not kind of my enjoyment out of games where it's kind of like I'm just doing this just to get points. I'd rather do something cool.
Right.
Like it'd be like, and of course there's players of this who probably have it set up to where they're like, I have 8 beer that on my final turn I'm gonna spend this and sell and
Right.
and it's like, oh man, I played badly.
And that's where I feel like I played not as well as I could because I should be able to set up for that.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think there's just people like this game just has an inherent. No one's gonna let you do that.
Right.
That's the thing, and that's kind of what bugs me. That's why I don't like Architects. Is like, oh, it's so cool. You can put as many workers in the same location and multiply. No one's letting you do that. So the inherent cool factor of the game is cock blocked by players, and that's just the nature of the game. When you play this, your mindset has to be clicked to these resources aren't mine.
Right.
I put them out there, but they're not mine. So I can't get upset if someone uses it.
Right.
First time play, I was like, what the fuck? Because it felt like you do a whole turn to
set
up, and then someone just undoes that, and you're like, well, I just wasted the turn. Yay.
Right.
Brett, what do you think? What are your overall thoughts? Was it as bad as you thought it was going to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which isn't awful.
Yeah.
It's just, I could tell, watching playthrough, I could tell this is going to be either I'm going to spend every turn agonizing over every possible move and trying to math everything out, which is no fun.
Right.
Or I'm just going to do some semi-random things that kind of look like they might be a good idea, but not have a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
Which is what I did. And it worked out okay, but definitely not a winning strategy.
Right.
Yeah, it's I mean, this is kind of what this game turns out. Like, in most Euros, I can play and be like, okay, I feel like I'm doing really well. Every time I've played this, I'm just like, it's a toss-up.
Yeah.
I don't know how many points I'm going to get. I don't know how many points. I mean, I could theoretically math it out and sit here and be like, he's going to get this many points, but I don't want to do that.
You could, but I kind of like that factor that I don't know. Like, it's always, I feel like, it's a toss-up. Like, I think, like, you jumped ahead in the canal era. And it's like, I thought I did fairly well. I was like, I was a little shocked that you were that many points ahead of me.
Right.
And then at the end, it's like, he has a lot of rails and a lot of good spots. And it just came out that I had a little bit better.
Yeah. You had 8 more points, which, funny enough, came from, I think, selling that twice. And here's the thing that frustrates me about this game and some other games is whenever I see my final score and I lost and I can't figure out why I lost, it's like, okay, well then what's the incentive to play again? You know? Like if I could pick out, okay, I messed up there, like, okay, I'll do better next time. Here I'm like, I have never changed how I play. 130 seems like a decent score, so why did I lose? And it's like, and the game doesn't have the incentive or the variety for me to want to come back and try and do better because it's like, I'm just going to do the same beats over and over and just hope that this time it happens to work out better.
Right.
Interesting. I have the same philosophy of what I enjoy in a game, but the opposite spectrum of complexity.
Okay.
I want much more simple, straightforward games with very little hidden.
Yeah.
Because then you can develop strategies, and then you're actually just playing strategy versus strategy, ultimately.
Right.
Whereas all the variety and all of the randomness of the heavier Euro-type games, for me, that's what makes it, I can't strategize anything, but for some people it is such a great thrill that it's going to be different. And what worked before, I'm going to have to tweak every time.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is actually a very good point considering just the two opposite, like, because, like, yours is like chess. Nothing's hidden. I know how this entire game works front to back, so therefore it's how well I am as a player versus you as a player.
Right.
And I get that as well, but it's like for the inherent nature of a board game, I don't want to come back and play the same game over and over. So I'm like, that's boring to me.
Yeah, and trying to learn from a grandmaster.
Yeah, I guess that's true. In chess, it's just like,
by getting beaten by them several times.
gonna move the pawn. The twinster strategy. Okay, nope, we're done. I didn't know you were Grandmaster. I'm gonna quit playing. You beat me already from saying whatever the fuck you just said. Yeah, and for a game as efficient as this one, I do still think that the deck is just a weird addition. Like, how you can get screwed by the cards. And, like, my opening hand was awful. It was so bad. So it's like, you do kind of tailor your strategy off your opening hand. And yeah, they do have to
hope that the cards you draw play into that.
And it kind of did, but it's like, my strategy was not to do this. Like, my strategy was to do this, but I had no purples.
Right.
So, theoretically, I could have built anywhere. But I had a lot of cards that were the resource cards.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, I can't build in purple because I have no purples. They have a way around that. Obviously, you can spend an action to you burn a card and multiple cards to then draw the wilds. It's there. At least it's there.
Right.
But in a game that's all about efficiency, it's like, so I wasted a turn, really. And then if you spend your turn to do that, and then someone, like you ended up going, builds there, it's like,
right,
okay, like, I guess I'm screwed there.
And you asked me the question, like, how many times I do it earlier, and I did it twice. And I said I'd roughly do it probably twice.
Yeah.
I think the scout action for the second half, because I do think being a little bit, like, in the first half of the game, everything's so much cheaper. Yes, you have less money, but because of, like, your connections are cheaper, it's easier to spread out, so you can kind of tailor where you are going to go with your links to your hand a little bit better.
Yeah.
Where in the second half, because railroads cost so much more, and I'm trying to do it as efficient, so I'm trying to pop 2 every time I do an action.
Yeah.
Having wilds in my hand to make sure I'm going to the right city and can build multiple times in the same city, kind of powerful for me.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. Like, having that, just holding them in your back pocket if you're not drawing what you want to draw. But I think in both eras, how you start is kind of gonna.
It's going to dictate a lot.
I feel like it dictates if you succeed or fail.
Yeah.
So some people could just get that opening hand where it's like, man, I can start in Birmingham, and I have Nuneaton, I have Coventry, and I can go, I can do that. Man, it's all set in stone. And because I have these cards, chances of them having him are slim to none. So I'm just kind of set up to succeed. And I have Tuxeter and Stafford and Kidderminster and Redditch, and I'm like, where do I... Like, I have nothing. I have nothing.
So I agree. So one of the things I do dislike with the randomness of these tiles is the fact that here we're playing a 3-person game, so we're supposed to be able to go up here, and you have 2 blanks.
I also... I'd probably house rule that.
I probably would
almost
too.
Be like, if a location gets 2 blanks, you reshuffle.
Yeah.
To where every possible selling point, depending on the number of players, has at least someone.
I would honestly just shuffle the 2 that were down there, and it would take one of the spots up there.
Yeah.
With the double.
Yeah. That's honestly... Because, like, funny enough, we were playing a 3-player game, and I was like, this is basically a 2-player game.
Yeah.
Because no one ever... You went up to stone just because you had the card for whatever.
Because I needed beer. And I didn't need a connection for my own beer.
Yeah.
So that was the only reason I held on to stone.
Yeah. So, but then, like, I wanted to go to blue this entire time and kind of isolate myself and be like, I'm going to use my own resources. I'm going to stay up there. But there was no reason to. Because I can't sell to Warrington.
Right.
So it's like, well, that's dumb.
Right.
Okay. So I kind of find that a little bit... Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's annoying. I like that these are in here, because didn't the original version, they were printed?
Yeah,
they were like set.
It was set.
Yeah. Probably, that is a very fixable house rule.
Yeah.
But if you don't do house rules, that's a thing that can pop up. Brett, what do you think of the cards? What do you think? Did the randomness irk you? Was it kind of just whatever?
Not really, because, again, I didn't have a particular strategy.
Yeah.
So I just felt like the cards were just options.
Okay.
I could build in the city if I choose to, or I can build this resource. Well, where am I nearby that? Okay, I need to build a rail to get there. Then I can lay it down the next turn, and then somebody can take it all away, but at least I'll get points for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've already connected to it.
Yeah. the stealing of
The
resources.
only strategy I had at all that I could see made any sense was get some level 2 buildings out as fast as possible.
That is
Yes.
a very solid strategy.
That was my strategy.
So
not do well.
let's actually talk about that, because I personally don't enjoy the hard reset, because generally you're not going to get a lot of level 2s out. You can get some,
Right.
But
I
also
got 2 each game I played.
yeah,
You got
so-
1, I think.
I got
or
1.
2 this time.
I didn't get any. That was basically by design as well. I was looking, I'm like, I could get these level 2s out, but at the same time, I kind of didn't feel the need to, because you guys did. So I was like,
Right.
well, I'll use your stuff.
Right.
So thank you for that. But at the same time, it's kind of like it's like you're playing 2 separate shorter games, and it's like I feel like you're kind of getting your engine going to get these cooler high level buildings out, but then it's like, oh, game arrow's over, boom,
Right.
and you're like, man, all the tracks I made, all the buildings I made, those are just all gone, and now I have to start over with
that's a
less
lot to
money.
reset.
Yeah. And I don't particularly like that. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but for me as a player, I'm just kind of like, well, that's annoying.
It does feel like a big loss.
Yeah,
Right.
because you're basically starting the game entirely over, and not a lot of games do that. My Father's Work is a kind of a Euro-style game where it does but you have permanent perks that you're always ahead. And then this, yeah, get level 2s out for at least coal and iron, but even then you're still kind of slightly behind, or
Right.
you're going to be behind in the canal era to try and get ahead in the railroad era.
So I think my best play of this was I got at least one, if not both, of the level 1 beers out, level 1 coal and iron out, and then I got rid of the level 1 of these buildings.
Clay buildings, I think is what they are.
Yeah,
or cotton?
or cotton. I think it's cotton.
Okay.
Because then I was able to build at least one level 2 and flip it, and it's worth the same number of points. It's worth less income, but it's worth 2 connection points. So at that
Right.
point, you're just getting more points per round, and that was honestly one of the better games I played, because a lot of those the low levels have good connections. So you just start trying to build in one area, connecting as much as you can. I do think I underused development in this game. I think
That seems to be an action that seems like it's useless, but it's
I
probably
think
a lot
it's
more
really
powerful than
powerful.
this. Especially if you can get your own iron out and
Yeah.
use your own iron to then flip the tile to
right.
get access to higher level ones. That's probably a strategy that was underutilized everywhere. I did it once because I didn't get a beer out, and then I got rid of one of my pottery ones.
And I did
is like,
it-
that cost 0, but
Kind of the cleanup of what you did trains at the second half. I did the development on the end of the first half. I got one of my irons out and then did 2 developments my next turn to flip it for points and to get rid of all the things I couldn't use anymore.
what were you going to say, Brett?
I'm just going to say, that it's kind of like it feels like a wasted action until round 2 when
Yeah.
it's required.
That is true, yeah.
And actually it wasn't. And I actually several times I went, what happens if I just don't build those buildings anymore at all?
Right.
Leave
Yeah.
those ones there and just ignore them.
I mean, because, like, there's very few tiles that you can't develop out of.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to find out if your income's high, like 22 or 17 or 15, if you just spend a couple turns developing using
Right.
other people's iron or potentially your own to just really bowl past some of these the manufacturing ones, to just wipe them, to then be like, okay, well that's gonna give me 7, 9, 11, potentially getting
Right.
to this higher level pottery. So on your turn, like in one turn where it's like, oh, I can build a beer thing for 2, and then I have my level 5 out, so that's 20 points.
Right.
But still, there's a lot of this game that I feel like is a little bit of wasted turns. Not major,
Right.
but I personally, as a player, I don't like to, because there were at least 2 times where I was like, I need beer out, I can build beer, but I have to build a connection. I don't want to build a connection and build beer because that's just going to be taken. So you're constantly kind of like hesitating to even play the game because you're just scared someone's going to take your shit.
Right.
And you have no way of knowing if people have the ability. Like I think in the Canal era, I could have built in Walsall, but I was like, I just don't like. I can build the connection. I can build my beer there, but what the fuck do they have? Can they take it?
So
and it undoes everything because I need my beer.
I did that once because you built here randomly, like I think the coal. And I was literally my next turn was I was going to build beer for the next round. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can't do that anymore.
Oh,
he builds one train, or he decides to double train it, and he'll take the beer I need.
Yeah, and beer is
everything.
It is everything in this game. Like you can get a shit ton of coal, you can get a shit ton of iron. Even if you don't build it yourself, it's available. It just might cost a lot. But beer is so limited that you're just like hesitant this entire game, and I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
Like I don't like sitting here being like, man, I'm scared if they're gonna take my one resource because that's like the whole fucking thing that I just did.
So interesting. Because whenever I put out resources, whenever I built buildings and plan out resources, I was planning for you to take them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I never had a plan for them because I'm not planning one step ahead.
Right.
But
well, that's why
but
you're
it's
down
an
here
interesting
and we're upset.
mindset
I'm
is
kidding.
that I know you're going to take it, and
Yeah.
I want you to take it because I'm going to
Yeah.
get the points. I'm already connected to it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, there's value in that.
I do feel... I think that's a valid strategy with the coal and iron, but I think beer is so valuable, we're going to get more points than you would gain from flipping the beer over. Mm-hmm. Like,
Yeah.
you flip a level beer over, that's going to be 5 points versus the 11 I got from using it, you know?
Right.
So, because there's so many ways and spots for iron and coal that you're never really cock-blocked out of that, but there's only one spot. Like, there's 2 spots there.
I mean,
Those
there's
are the only
beer. There's 2 of just the beer spots, but there's beer.
There is, but...
There's 2 isolated where you're guaranteed
Yes.
you're going to benefit from it.
Right. But because if you build your own, like let's say I had Derby, whatever.
Right.
I could the Derby card. That's a 4-player game, but I can play Derby and build my beer over there, and that's mine, so I don't need a connection.
Right.
Great. I don't have Derby. I have the one card. I have the beer card. This
Right.
is all I ever got that allowed me to build beer. So I had to make a connection.
Right.
Therefore, because I had to have a connection there to build it,
Everybody
you
has
guys have a
access to it.
connection. And so I feel like there were multiple rounds where I was doing I was just building a connection, pausing, doing something fuck all, building a connection somewhere else to stall out so that I didn't spend a lot of money.
You can do beer and the sell on the next action.
next turn. And that's not a pre-planning I enjoy because
Right.
it's centered around hesitancy.
Right.
Whereas in, like, let's say a game that is long-term planning, Teelatum, that's all long-term planning, but you can't really do a whole lot to stop me. Like, I'm always making
Right.
continuous progress. This is kind of like 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
And that's where I do like that in this because for me, Euro games, I want some player interaction, and that's the player interaction.
Yeah.
It's what like Ashley hates in worker placement games. She can't plan for what I'm going to take. Well, I like that. I like the fact that someone is probably going to take the spot I want.
Yeah.
And I have to figure out a different strategy around that. Or figure out planning of, I'm going to take this, but that means I'm not getting that.
Sure. Yeah, I think I like a lot of my Euro games where it's kind of like, here's my strategy, here's your strategy, we'll just see which one ends up working out this game. Like gathering resources, but also in a lot of worker placements, especially now, that 1 worker per spot thing is kind of dead. Like, even Viticulture was like that, then it's like, oh, this game kind of sucks, and then they added the Grande worker, where it's like, you can still take a spot, but I have this one use ability that allows me to go there, and I can only use it once, so you have to plan for that. That's perfectly fine, but here it's kind of like, oh god, I want those resources, but I'm basically putting them out there just so everyone else can use them.
Yep.
And so therefore I helped everyone else out because what I feel like I gained from the tile flipping over isn't worth what I could have used the resources for.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at on that. It's kind of the same thing if you play Black Angel, like when you're playing dice, like you roll your dice and they're your colored dice, but anyone can use them, but they have to pay you a resource to use them. At least in that sense, someone has to actively give you something to use it, and here they're free for the taking.
Except they're giving you points.
They are, or because of the rule we found out of you have to use the closest,
Right.
People can kind of actually manipulate that to where your stuff is never getting used. So it's like...
In certain instances, that is bad, but, I mean,
That would be
points.
tough to do more than like maybe once or twice.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it definitely can come up.
Sure, but I mean that's the thing is like in a game like this, it is so efficient. You want to keep every turn
Right.
feels like you need to constantly be moving forward. And for me, I feel like there's just one too many step backs
Yep.
that makes this game from being like excellent for me.
Right.
But I mean, these are all just grievances, really. Like, I don't think that it's inherently like a bad design or a bad flaw of the game.
Yeah.
It's just things that if someone were to want me to play brass, it's like, do I feel like being a dick today? Do I feel like being annoying today? Not
It's
really.
gonna be worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like. And it's like, I don't feel like being an asshole. I just kind of want to do my strategy. And, oh, cool, you built in front of the water thing.
Right.
Yay. That's annoying. I hate you today. You know what's funny? We were asking about what industry, like what years these were. It's right there.
Yeah, I saw that after.
I was like, I was like 1860s. Is that right? You said 1880s, like an idiot. We're both 10 years off. Mine was in between the range. Yours
was
was
in
out of
between.
it.
Without going over.
Without going over, yeah. So, again, overall, it's a solid Euro.
Yeah.
That's where it's at for me.
It's a solid Euro.
Like, that's kind of where it's at. This is one that I will never understand why it's raved about as much.
I
Like,
think
this one I do not get. I get Arc Nova jumping up to 4. Obviously, I get Gloomhaven. Pandemic Legacy was one that I was like, are you kidding me?
so. I get this
The one.
because to me, it's kind of like the Twilight Imperium. Why Twilight Imperium's up? It's a game. Yes, it's a reskinning of Brass. It's a little bit better version. So you have all the people who love Brass from way back when.
Going out and downvoting all the games ahead of it.
Well, somewhat of that, but it's a solid enough Euro game that people have constantly. I mean, it's been now made 3 times because you have Lancaster.
Lancaster, okay.
And so, to me, that's kind of the positive of it is it's loved, it's long, like it's been around for a long time. It's still solid.
Yeah.
And they did like just one or two little tweaks.
Yeah.
And
just
suddenly
To not
it's even better.
like piss off the fans of it and to
Right.
completely overhaul individual player powers and
Right.
yeah.
So,
Whole new sideboard with tracks.
so that's why I think, like, I don't think it's the best Euro game out there, but it's
Yeah.
solid. It's not a bad Euro game.
Yeah.
And so you have this, I call it, I don't know, cult following is the wrong word for it, but you have this group who loves it for long enough, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Where you have, like, people like me, I haven't even played Arc Nova yet. It'll take a little while for me to probably play it
No, it's like
because it's new. But, I mean, it's
'Cause I
just
have it.
it's just new, right?
Yeah.
So, it shows that's good because it jumped up.
Yeah, there is something to be said about games that are tried and true. We kind of like
Right.
overlook those now because it's not the new
Right.
hotness. And I think that's why like Concordia is still loved because it came out in what 2012.
Yeah,
I
and
think.
this is, I think, it's 07.
Is that early?
Well, original Brass, I think, was 07.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's just been
Yeah.
around for a long
Here's
time.
the thing that sucks though about this game in particular is that whole bullshit with the BG like
Yeah,
is now it didn't do this game any justice because now everyone's like okay so the community's fucking petty
it is.
and it's like okay I don't want to be involved in that because that's
the top 10 is definitely... The top 10 Board Game Geek
Yeah.
is petty.
because it doesn't matter to us because we're not 6 years old
Right.
but it matters to some people and
Right.
especially it's just like really you couldn't just love the game and leave well enough alone you had to go out and just manipulate a ranking system just because you're vindictive
Right.
okay like anyway I was going to try this game but that whole thing makes me just not even want to try it now
Right.
I had tried it because it was talked about highly before that whole thing. And
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, now's a perfect time to get it on the channel. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I got for it. You guys got anything else to talk about? Brett, you got anything? Best game of all time?
Just a couple of novel mechanics novel to me at least mechanics that I like. Like
Well, what do you like?
the turn order being dependent on how much you spend.
Yeah,
That's thematic, and that's also interesting strategically.
it
Yeah.
is. And after multiple plays, I finally used that to my
Right.
strategy. Again, it was centered around the hesitancy where I was like, okay, I'm just going to build one rail.
You're setting up for the next.
And then I'm hopefully guaranteed to go first. So then, haha! Now I can do my beer and my sell action.
Or you can attempt to manipulate it. Well, you can manipulate it to the point where you go last and then first, so you actually get 4 actions in a row.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
a good point. Yeah, I do enjoy that. Obviously, my preferred way of turn order is like I always want to go first, but you can't. You cannot do that.
Yeah, you can't.
You're eventually going to spend a shit ton of money.
Right.
It's kind of a flip a little bit on Five Tribes, if you guys have played that, where you auction your points to try and go first. So if you really want to go, you're getting rid of a lot of points to do that. I do always enjoy a tweak on turn order.
Yep.
So,
it's unique.
Yeah. One of them. Yeah. What else? What else did you like?
Did I like?
Yeah, I think because you said that. You said there were a few novelties.
Mechanics.
The idea of being able to purchase excess coal and iron and then sell it back at market rate.
Yeah.
Again, fun theme, but also so you don't run out of critical resources.
Right.
Yeah, because you do need those for pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And it's a neat thing. I think you did it a few times where it's like that's actually something I could have utilized that I didn't even think of was when we were buying all this because no one was doing a lot of coal. Like probably at one point I could have just built a coal thing just to have it immediately flip.
Right.
Because you sell it all back.
I did that like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that could have been the difference.
And then you need coal from the next time, but you now made it from $3 to $1 and made money on that coal plus the flip.
So now when you need it for your next round, it's now cheaper.
Right.
Or then people start buying it at a cheaper rate and you do it again.
Right.
Do you feel, here's a question because I just remembered I was going to ask, do you feel because this game is around 07, not this version in particular, but the system, and because there's not a whole lot of variety to it, basically none,
Right.
do you think this game has a meta?
I assume, but I've never played people who are playing, have 100 plays of this.
True.
So I assume there's a meta.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason I say that is because Twilight Imperium, which is incredibly complex game with lots of randomness, has metas.
Gotcha.
So if that game has metas in the community that it has, and this has a large community as well, and there's less variation,
True.
I can't see that there isn't a meta somewhere.
Yeah.
I just don't know what is.
Yeah, I'd be very curious if someone in the comments can tell us if what the meta is like, where it's like you always want to do this or you always want to do that. I mean, Magic the Gathering has metas that come in and out.
I mean, the rulebook gives you, like, they have a little section of hints, and their hint is don't be afraid to get loans. Like, your income can be low. And the fact that we kind of didn't, like, once we could ramp up our income, we never brought it back. Because there was a couple times where I was liking as 9, and I was like, realistically, I probably should start taking some loans for the money that I need.
I think in the second era, I was the only one that took a loan.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, because it's like, okay, I'm gaining 13, I jump down to 10. That I lost 3 money, but I gained 30. I'm set for the rest of the game.
Right. And that was kind of where I bet you that type of meta that's thinking of is there, and I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, scale of 1 to 10. We'll start with Brett.
I'll say 7.
7?
It's an 8 for
8,
me.
yeah. I'm also at a 7. Kind of same thing I gave Concordia. Like, I kind of put them in the same. This is a good game. I don't consider it great. I definitely don't think it's number 1. I don't think any game should be number 1 because it's stupid. But I could see if you didn't mind. Like, I had a few more negatives. If you didn't mind those, then this could be an 8. But I also really like variety in games. That's probably the biggest thing that keeps this from an 8 for me. Is there's just no variety.
Yeah. It's just
no
a solid.
variety.
It's a solid Euro game for me. So
yeah, even Concordia has more variety
Yeah.
than this, and at least there's a bunch of expansions for that. So that one is like, oh yeah, I'd come back to this one. This one, I kind of have to be in the mood.
Right.
Like this isn't as fuck you as like some other games like Barrage or because at least you're rewarded for stuff versus just I'm just dicking you over just to do it. And you're like, cool.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pack it. So that's our thoughts on Brass Birmingham. Everyone, let us know what you think of the game in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.